I've always been in a strange place with machine guns. I can never really tell if they're the best for ad clear or DPS. The huge mag size would imply ad clear, but why would you use your heavy for that when your primaries and abilities can do that so effectively? But when I ran Root of Nightmares for the first time, I realised that machine guns can be good for DPS, because Thunderlord carried me through the entire raid. I've had it on me ever since really, and I've been looking at all the other LMGs in the game to see if they can stand up to Thunderlord in terms of DPS ability. Just like my linear list, I'll be ranking them from bad to good based on their ideal role for endgame DPS. Whether it's a raid, dungeon, GM, or solo for whatever reason. I'll try and consider as many scenarios that it could be used for to make it completely fair. Let's quickly go over the difference in LMG frames. Adaptive frames fire at 450 RPM and are the standard for LMGs. This means their stat distribution is the most even and ultimately the most average. Rapid fire frames fire at 900 RPM and are usually considered the worst frame due to their poor ammo conservation, but they do gain a reload buff when the magazine is empty. High impact frames fire at 360 RPM and deal more raw damage than the others, but they are also the most accurate, especially when stationary or crouched. A fine memorial, mid. This adaptive from the moon isn't a great place to start for this list. Don't get me wrong, I do really enjoy this LMG, but it's not because of its perks. It's got some fun selections here, Clown Cartridge and Ambitious Assassin for increased mag size and One for All and Frenzy for ad clear, but it doesn't have any DPS specific perks. Sure, Frenzy could if you manage to get it to work, but personally I can never find Frenzies to stay activated into the DPS phase. Not to mention I don't think adaptive frames really work with DPS strats as much as rapid fires since they can dump the ammo quicker, and high impacts can deal more damage at not much of a slower RPM than adaptives. 7th Seraph Saw. Good. Now this is surprising. A Season of the Worthy weapon with good perks. Clown Cartridge or autoloading in the left column, with Vorpal or Firing Line in the right column. I really only suggest Vorpal for soloing or 2-manning, since the Firing Line gives a 20% buff to precision damage, and on a high impact I can't imagine much of an issue with landing those critical hits. Avalanche. Good. There's actually 2 versions of this weapon, since it's from the Dawning and it gets reissued every year, so I'm going to talk about the newest version only, which has some great perks on it for both ad clear and DPS. Autoloading with Target Lock or Cascade Point for DPS. Cascade Point I'd only recommend if you're running another weapon during DPS, like Arbalest or Erosion. Ambitious or Subsistence with Incandescent, Adrenaline Junkie or Swash for ad clear. Junkie being good for any grenade builds like Ashen Wake, Sunbraces or Young Ahamkara, and Swash being good for melee builds like Caliban's Hand, Bonk Tone or Sunbraces. This is a surprisingly versatile weapon, and it's a real shame it only comes around once a year, because I'd love to grind for this more often. Thermal Erosion. Unusable. This thing really sucks. The only usable things on this are Field Prep and Demo. Maybe Dragonfly, but honestly I wouldn't even bother considering it. The only thing this LMG has going for it is the high reload speed, meaning that if you pair it with Field Prep and Solar Reloader and crouch whilst you do reload, you'll have the fastest possible reload on that LMG. Commemoration. Great. Ever since Deepstone Crypt got its weapons reissued, they've been complete bangers. Don't get me wrong, the first set are good, but this second set is great, and Commemoration is the best of the bunch. For DPS, I'd recommend Reconstruction or 4th Times with Focus Fury or Firing Line. Of course, Focus Fury comes with a caveat of having to hit at least 50% of your mag as crit, but with Reconstruction, you'll only have to hit 25% as crit, since it can refill to double your mag size. Then for ad clear, I'd suggest Feeding Frenzy, Subsistence or Dragonfly with Killing Tally, Unrelenting or Repulsor Brace. I'm not suggesting Rampage here, because Killing Tally is like if Rampage didn't leave. Repulsor is great on both Gerfalcons and Void Titans with Controlled Demolition, since you can keep Volatile going and keep your Overshield up. Shattered Cypher. Good. This rapid fire is realistically only good for ad clear, but it is good at it. Autoloading with Surrounded, Rampage or Adrenaline Junkie. I can imagine running this thing with a more support build, like Lumina or Divinity during a DPS phase, and also keeping all the ads at bay. Besides that very specific scenario though, I don't think I'd bother much. Corrective Measure. Good. I keep seeing this compared to Commemoration online, and honestly I just don't get it. Commemoration is a gold medal to Corrective's silver. They both hold relatively the same place in the game, both void, both from a raid and both adaptive frames. For DPS I can only recommend Rewind rounds and high impact reserves, which don't get me wrong, can output a lot of damage, but if that's its best role I wouldn't use it personally. For ad clear it's got some great choices like Demo, Feeding Frenzy or Subsistence with One for All, Adrenaline Junkie and Firefly. But again, Commemoration can do better than these choices, except for Demo. The Swarm. Bad. What a stinker. A Nightfall weapon too, you'd hope they give it better perks than these. No good DPS perks set up here, but it does have good DPS perks in the right column, just no ammo sustaining perks on the left. Feeding Frenzy and Dragonfly or Tricorn for ad clear. Besides that, I don't think I can suggest this one. Aron Thunder. Unusable. For such a cool looking LMG, it's a shame it's stuck being a PvP LMG. But the only good perks on it for PvE are Field Prep and Auto Loading in the left column with Rampage in the right. Honestly, just not worth the effort of grinding for it. Recurrent Impact. Good. The first Stasis LMG both on this list and ever, Recurrent Impact is a staple to my Stasis Titan at this point. Honestly, the biggest drawback of this LMG is the fact that it is Stasis, meaning it will likely get used less in DPS since Stasis Supers aren't very meta right now. But it does have some great perks like Field Prep in the left column and Focus Fury or Firing Line for DPS in the right column. But both perks do require you to be landing precision hits, so I'd only recommend this for players who are confident they can handle a rapid fire frame. Then for ad clear we've got Stats for All, Perpetual Motion and Subsistence in the left column and One for All, Headstone and Frenzy in the right. Maybe it's my bias talking, but I really do enjoy this LMG, even if it's not necessarily the best to use. Fixed Odds. Good. This high impact made a big splash when it landed, but I don't think the water has rippled much since then. Maybe it's because in terms of solo LMGs it really doesn't have much of a competition going. Or maybe people would just generally enjoy this thing. Personally, I'm in the I haven't got much else to use category, where I'm just waiting for something better to come out. Sure, Trials has a great one, but Fixed Odds is easier to get than jumping into that cesspool, and it's not like it's terrible. Feeding Frenzy and Incandescent is great on Solo Titan, since it can just generate sunspots everywhere. If not Incandescent, then Killing Tally. But Field Prep with either Focus Fury or Firing Line just isn't that interesting on a high impact. Sure, I just raved about it on Recurrent Impact, but I find it easier to land at 50% of crit hits when I'm dumping the entire mag in like 7 seconds. Chain of Command. Good. This thing is really only good for ad clear and one specific instance of DPS. Demo in the right column is usually a terrible thing, but since Adrenaline Chunk is in the left column, then it makes Demo's placement more usable. A lot of players will run Osmosis and Demo to force this LMG to be a completely different element, more often than not solo, but I just don't find that feasible. Adrenaline and Demo would be alright for DPS, if the DPS phase has plenty of ads to kill with your grenade, then you both reload and gain a 33% damage buff. Honestly, the best thing about this LMG is its ease of acquisition, since you can just buy it from the monument in the tower. Blank Stride. Bad. A melee-centric ad-clear LMG. Need I say more about why this sucks? Grave Robber or Perpetual Motion with One for All or Swash are your go-to rolls here. Don't get me wrong, Grave Robber and Swash is a unique and fun roll to use on Arc melee builds, but in content where you'll be ad-clearing with an LMG, you're either running Divinity, which will match your element type to be fair, or the roll won't matter much since most enemies will just fall over dead as soon as you look at them. Quillem's Terminus. Mid. I think I just want to hate this more than I reasonably should, but can you blame me? This thing doesn't even have a DPS roll, just ad clear. Don't get me wrong though, it's got some great ad clear perks like Stats for All or Unrelenting in the left column with Headstone, Firefly and Killing Tally in the right column. I get that for DPS you're supposed to use the Origin perk to overflow the mag and use Focus Fury or Firing Line, but I just wish I had Field Prep at the very least to help with ammo economy and reload quicker. Unwavering Duty. Great. Oh, if only this was easier to acquire. Maybe everyone would be raving about this as much as they did with Fixed Odds. This adaptive can get great rolls for both rolls it fills. Autoloading with Firing Line, Focus Fury and Cascade Point for DPS phases, and Ambitious or Subsistence with Killing Tally or Incandescent. Honestly, not many LMGs can be as versatile as this one is, not to mention how good it looks. Retrofit Escapade. Great. Just like Fixed Odds, this rapid fire made quite the splash when it landed, since volatile rounds were just broken at the time. However, since they were fixed, I don't think that many players stuck on with this. But I actually love this thing. 4th times in Target Lock is such a powerful perk combo, especially with Falcons or any kind of volatile build. This can keep up with linears in terms of DPS. For ad clear, Retrofit has got plenty of perks to go with. Feeding Frenzy or Stats for All with Frenzy, Rampage, Tricorn or One for All can all handle large amounts of ads impressively. Overall, a standout weapon. Terminus Horizon. Good. This high impact is really slept on, possibly the most slept on LMG in the game. Triple Tap or Rapid Hit with Cascade Point or Target Lock for DPS are great options. I've even been using my Demo Target Lock roll on my Arc Warlock to keep up with my Arc Souls. For ad clear though, there's really only Demo Adrenaline. I wouldn't use Volt Shot on your heavy though, especially since the Jolt nerf, it doesn't really deal nearly as much damage as it used to, and it's too much of a pain to activate. Circular Logic. Great. The only strand option on our list, this one is great for both rolls LMGs fill. Envious Assassin is the go-to perk in the left column here, since as long as you're ad clearing with your other two weapons it's going to be filling Logic's mag. However, for whatever reason, using Logic like it's your primary, then Feeding Frenzy is your go-to. In the right column, Target Lock is your DPS option ideally. but Vorpal could also work if you can't get your hands on the God Rolls. Then, Demo, Tricorn and Hatchling are the best ad clear perks, mainly Tricorn and Hatchling since strand ability kills are super easy to proc, and Hatchling is super useful on pretty much any strand build. Requires a farm. Good. Let's get the obvious out of the way here. There's 12 perks in both the left and right column, meaning there's 24 total. Plus it's a Gambit exclusive weapon, so I could never recommend grinding for this weapon. But if you happen to have played Gambit and have plenty of engrams stored up, and you need a Void LMG, I'd still probably recommend a different LMG. There's plenty of good options to go for, but if you happen to have one drum and it's got a good roll on it, then this thing could run circles around other LMGs. Fuel Prep, Clown Cartridge and Triple Tap in the left column, with Target Lock, Cascade Point, Frenzy and Firing Line for DPS. Plenty of good options there, but the real standout perk is Destabilizing Rounds. Mix that with Clown Cartridge or Field Prep and you've got a great Void ad clear weapon that is unique compared to the others, since Destabilizing can't roll on anything else yet. Song of Ute. Great. Another great weapon from Crow's End, a raid full of truly standout weapons. Let's start with DPS. Rewind or Reconstruction in the left column, with Cascade, Target Lock or Bait and Switch in the right column. Realistically, in any situation, I'm going to recommend Bait and Switch over anything else, since it has such a high damage bump with little effort compared to similar perks. Then for ad clear, I'm going to suggest Feeding Frenzy, Unrelenting or Demo with Sword Logic. I would say Volt Shot, but again, Volt Shot on your heavy just doesn't feel justified for how well primaries can use the same perk. Honestly, the Reconstruction Bait and Switch roll is such a good perk set, I'd say to use it on nearly any heavy weapon, let alone one with as good stats as this one. Elatic Principle. Bad. Man, I wanted this to be great so bad, but unfortunately, it's just not. In the left column, I can only suggest Eddy Current, which, with how unstable it is to fire rapid fire whilst moving, is not ideal. Then in the right column, I'd suggest Adrenaline Junkie, Tricorn or Target Lock. I've thrown Target Lock in there just in case you want to use this for DPS, but honestly I wouldn't bother. Tricorn on Arc is really easy to proc, since most Arc melees will kill in one hit, and Arc grenades that linger, like Storm or Pulse, have been the king of grenades since Arc 3.0, which helps Adrenaline Junkie too. Overall, I'd only use this LMG if I was in New Light in Season 23 and couldn't get my hands on anything better. Ultimately, LMGs are some of the best ad clear and DPS options for your heavy slot, and they're also some of the worst, so I hope this guide helps you pick up some of the diamonds in the rough.